we're going to talk about being a friend versus being a mentor, and then sort of like the rules and everything, procedures around mentorship and what that's going to look like, especially when we think about mentoring that's happening in the virtual space versus in the in-person space. And then we can maybe have some share outs if anyone has any examples, but that's going to be it. So really the first thing is a friend versus a mentor, and what are the differences? I think especially with the age group that we are working with, where we go from 13 up to 21 years old, it's definitely a lot easier to sort of slide into that friend category because a lot of times we are a little bit closer to the age of the young people that we're working with. But I would say really the biggest thing for us when we think about a friend versus a mentor is there to lend guidance and support and sort of help the young person work through whatever it is we're working on, whether it's an art project or whether it's some like career readiness curriculum, different things like that. And a friend is maybe more someone who is commiserating or sharing more personal details. And we really want to like stray away from too personal of details. We want to still be vulnerable and present with our youth and be honest about ourselves and our life and our experiences, but maybe staying away from that, that sort of commiseration, that sort of, that friend space. So I think a really good example of this that we have as like a hard and fast rule is the social media thing. So none of the teens or any youth in our programs are allowed to follow us on social media, nor are we allowed to follow them. So if, for example, an Instagram follow came through from someone that you're mentoring or interacting with on your personal page, you would just maybe block them or talk to them, have that conversation like, hey, for what we're doing right now in this mentorship space, that's not really appropriate. Maybe once you're out of the program and we have a different relationship set up, that could be possible. And they're always welcome to maybe follow if you have a business page, or for us, like the Teen Tech Center has its own Instagram page, so they're allowed to follow that. And we post updates about the program on that page, but they want to be able to follow Tate and I on our personal pages. So that would be the difference there. And you can always just let us know if there's anything that comes up that you're not exactly sure how to handle it. Just talk to Tate or I, or Terry and Teresa have a lot of experience with the program as well, and sort of those boundaries. So any of us would be happy to answer any questions. If you're like, well, is this, for example, when I first started, I was at Cottonwood High School, so working with a similar age group, but we had one student in our program who was a senior, and we had a group that was coming in to do mentorship, and one of the mentors got really close with this particular student, and we found out that they had been meeting for coffee outside of like school time. And even though it was a very like, she was just wanting extra help with homework, and there wasn't anything like gross happening, it was still just one of those like boundary lines that we didn't want to have crossed. And we had to sit down and have the conversation with that person. Like, I know that you're still in college and you're really close in age, to this student, but it's just one of those things that we got to keep the boundary lines really firm in these cases. So yeah, kind of that mentorship versus friendship, another way to look at it. So instead of like having your arm around them and doing buddy, like you're the water that's helping them grow. Yeah. So a friend would be informal and personal, and you guys would be on more of an equal plane. And not to say that as mentors and mentees, you can't have any fun, but a mentor would be more likely to offer guidance, and it's more of a formal and professional boundary and setting. All right, we're gonna skip all of this. A lot of this has more to do, this was originally like for elementary aged youth. Yeah, so anytime that you have to have sort of those hard and fast rules with the mentors, we just want to make sure that they're simple and easy to understand, and that things are addressed as they come up, and we don't sort of let things fester. Like maybe someone said something that you felt like wasn't appropriate, or they asked a question that you weren't sure how to answer. definitely it's okay to not know the answers. And sometimes the young people that we're working with might ask you questions that you're not comfortable with answering. And that's fine. It's okay for them to ask those questions. We just want to make sure that we're maybe not answering things that we aren't sure how to phrase it, and just say like, I'm not sure about that right now, but let me talk with the group and I will come back with an answer for you in a little bit. So it's okay to kind of leave it at that. You don't have to have all of the answers, especially in our space with Tate and I in our regular programming. Like teens will bring up maybe things about sex that you're not really comfortable with answering in the moment, and that's okay. Don't leave them hanging and just like not mention it and freeze up, but just say like, hey, we're not going to talk about that at this moment, but I will think about that and I will get back to you. And set a time frame that's comfortable for you. You can say before the next time we meet, or you can say after I have a chance to talk to Terry and Teresa and Colleen and Tate, or whatever it is you want to say. Like, don't leave them feeling ashamed or that they have done something wrong necessarily, unless it really, like if they made a homophobic comment, shut that down and be like, hey, that's not okay. But if it's something where they've just asked something you're not comfortable with, or even something that you don't know what the answer to the question is, it's okay to tell them like, I'm not really sure right now. We'll circle back to that in a little bit. So the discipline, and I don't anticipate this being a big thing for our group, because for the most part, they are that older teenage group, 16 to 21 year olds. I'm not sure if anyone here will be working with the like tier 1, the sort of 13 to 16 year old group. And there is a chance that some of you might be, and they might tend to be a little more immature than the older group. But for the most part, I think Tate and I will do our best to set them up with really clear expectations for how the meetings will go and the things that they should be expecting from the mentorship meetings. But just making sure that you kind of set some ground rules, set the expectations of your meeting before the meeting happens, or at the start of the meeting, like, hey, what are our goals for this meeting? What are we trying to accomplish? What are we working on? Kind of setting that tone and sort of timeline for what you're working on, because it can get really easy to get distracted and kind of chit chat for a while, which of course, like checking in, seeing how they're doing, them asking you some questions is totally fine. But we wouldn't want the whole like meeting to devolve into just like catching up on life, you know? And some of this again doesn't really apply to us. Again, this is a lot of in-person things. So for overall for the mentorship meetings, and I think, Terry, correct me if I'm wrong, they'll be happening over Zoom to start, and maybe possibly for the whole rest of the spring.
Yeah, I think for the professional pieces, we're going to be fine, like remote, but hopefully by summertime, we'll be able to do all of Teresa's crazy ideas with art.
Okay, perfect. So for all of the mentorship meetings that are going to happen on Zoom, I believe either Tate or I will be hosting those Zoom calls, and we'll probably put people into breakout rooms, and then we kind of might like flit in and out, kind of check in on how things are going. And then you can always like come back into the main room and ask any questions you may have, or maybe send a kid back into the main room to ask any questions. So that way we are there for you to check in with and not feel like, oh, now I'm with this teenager that I have never met in person before and I don't know what to do. We will do our best to really set up those meetings in a way that feels comfortable and hopefully like easy, but also structured for everybody.
And all the kids are going to be there in person with you. None of them will be joining remote from their homes.
Correct.
For example. Okay.
Yeah. Unless for some reason, you know, if Granite went virtual for a week again, we have kind of been following what the school district is doing. So unless that happens again, which fingers crossed it doesn't, that would be the only time we would go back to virtual as well. So all the kids should be in the center with us. They'll all have headphones on, so they should be able to like talk without being, you know, we'll have them spread out enough either in our space in the music studio, or we've got the co-op space that's also in the building where they could be in like an individual office, maybe for those older.
They can take off their mask.
Yes, and they can take off their masks.
That's huge. Like to be talking to someone with their mask, you don't even, that's huge. So I'm so happy that you did that.
Yeah, and I think we should have enough like either computer and laptops that they can be spread out. Like no one will be sitting next to or across from each other, so they will be able to take their masks off hopefully during the calls. And and talk. Yeah. So that should work out. Because yeah, you're right, Terry. That is really big to not
Big
just
deal.
see
Yeah.
the kids with their masks on. All right. So really, I would say that was kind of all that I had to cover. Really, the important things are, I think, definitely the social media thing with the teens, especially if you are someone who is cool. They might ask to like, hey, what's your Instagram? Or, I mean, most of them think Instagram is for old people. But, you know, if they if they asked for anything else, just be like, oh, no, that's, you know, we're not going to do that right now. That's not really appropriate for this setting. Or if you feel like you can't have that conversation with them, Tate or I would be more than happy to have that. And we will set that expectation for them before they ever are in those meetings. And it really hasn't been a big deal, I think, for Tate and I in the last couple of years. Like I haven't had any teens who have tried to follow me or anything. So yeah, does anyone have any questions or concerns about things that are going to happen? I hope it's a really good time. I think it's going to be a little easier on everyone having the kids in person with us and not in their own houses and trying to coordinate the Zoom remotely and all of that. So hopefully it is smoother sailing and we get everyone connected. And I know Tay has been working to set up some connections with businesses to host internships. So we're really excited to hopefully find really good fits for all of our C2C participants.
I'm excited. It's going to be good. You're amazing, Colleen. I'm so sorry
Thanks.
you're sick. And
no, that's okay.